Welcome to the Culinary Saijiki podcast. My name is Allison Whipple, and twice a month I'll bring you a conversation with a fellow haiku practitioner about the way that food and the seasons show up in their haiku practice. Visit www.culinarysaijiki.com to listen to the podcast, read long-form essays on these topics, and sign up to join the podcast conversation. You can also support the project at buymeacoffee.com/culinarysaijiki. Enjoy the show. All right, it is time for episode 2 of the Culinary Saijiki. And today I am talking with Christa Pandey. I am currently recording this up in my room in the house where I'm staying, as I wait for John to come back from Europe so we can go about actually getting settled in our own place. And I have a nice cup of coffee, and I will say that I have had a heck of a time trying to get this intro recorded. You probably notice my sound quality is a little different, and that is because I cannot find my nice microphone anywhere. I know I didn't leave it in Austin. I had set it somewhere very specifically, so I knew I'd have access to it, and I have no idea where that is. I've checked my room, I've checked my car, I've checked our storage space in the basement, so I guess it somehow ended up in the storage unit, which I'm not super stoked about going and trying to find it, but I guess that's what's going to have to happen. I'll try to maybe go do that today, but I needed to get this written, so I've been looking for this for days and days and days, and I just needed to get this done so I can get the episode out on time. So here we are, some slightly inferior recording quality on the intro, but so it goes. Thanks to those of you who gave me some good feedback on episode 1. This audio stuff really is new to me, and I'm hoping on the interview side at least I have resolved some of the errors from episode 1. I'd also like to thank Jeff Pope and Pamela P. They were my first 2 Buy Me a Coffee supporters, and they actually kicked in a donation before this podcast was even launched, so I have thanked them on the blog, but I did want to make sure to thank them on the podcast as well. And speaking of that Buy Me a Coffee page, this month, the bonus recipes, I'm going to do 2 bonus recipes, one for John's pitcher margaritas for a party, but then, I know not everyone drinks, so I'm going to do one of his great agua fresca recipes as well. That will probably post Tuesday night or Wednesday night. I'm trying to do the bonus and the podcast on the same day, but I'm adjusting to a new job, and it's a lot of work and still navigating this life transition. So thanks for your patience. Over on the blog, the most recent post is on the seasons of tea. That was a really fun post to write. I think that's the post that's gotten the most comments so far, so go have a look over there. And remember that you're always welcome to sign up to be part of this podcast. Over at the Culinary Saijiki blog, there's a link to join the conversation, and there's a Google form, and that just helps me get to know you and your work a little more. And actually, as I'm recording this, I remember someone sent form in late Saturday night that I haven't gotten to yet, and I am looking forward to checking that out and signing up more guests. All right, so let's get over to Christa. That's enough housekeeping. We recorded this episode in Christa's beautiful home in Austin, Texas before I left. I loved looking at Christa's just gorgeous furniture and her various treasures that she and her husband have picked up in their many years together. I've known Christa for a long time through the Austin poetry scene. I'm pretty sure I met her through Austin Poetry Society. I think that would make the most sense. We were both sort of more just standard free verse poets for a long time. And then we've both just made the switch into haiku uh, as our primary mode of poetic expression. And I remember when I was getting to know Christa, I have not read the entirety of Christa's life in poetry, but I do remember that when I was getting to know her, she was putting out a lot of chapbooks, and she had just an incredible contemplative focus in all of her poetry. It was philosophical, um, and really about being very present with one's thoughts and experience. And so to me, I see that her move into haiku was a really natural progression in her poetic voice. So I'm so glad to know Christa, and I'm glad I got this chance to record with her before I left. I'm glad she was willing to again be one of my early haiku podcast experiments. And at the end of our conversation, Christa mentioned that she's trying to write Tanka and really understand that form. And last week, I think, she posted that she had taken the first prize in the Fleeting Worlds Tanka contest. So I'm going to say, I guess she's figuring that form out pretty well. So congratulations, Christa. Welcome to the podcast. And I'm so happy once again that we had a chance to talk together before I moved. Christa Pandey resides in Austin, Texas, where she most recently is concentrating on writing in the Japanese short form. A longtime photographer and traveler, she finds pleasure in marrying words with photos after writing free verse poetry for years and publishing 4 chapbooks: Southern Seasons, Maya, Hummingbird Wings, and Who Am I? Who Are We? Her work can be found in Heron's Nest, Chrysanthemum, The Mamba, Failed Haiku, and Poetry P, among others. Welcome, Christa.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Christa is also a member of the Austin Haiku Study Group, and I'm glad to be going through and talking about food with all of us. So, Christa, would you like to read your first few haiku?
Yes. They all deal with the eggplant, and I have to say, as an introduction, I hate eggplant. But it's an acquired taste. I had to come to like it because my husband likes it, and that's why I also grow it. So, but my feelings towards the eggplant are very obvious when I read my haiku. Eggplant bounty, 1 or 2 a day. Why am I punished? Eggplant bounty, 1 or 2 a day. Why am I punished? Eggplant abundance, the bitter taste of home confinement. Eggplant abundance, the bitter taste of home confinement. Eggplant abundance, finally night frost. Eggplant abundance, finally night frost. Last eggplant baked into casserole. Winter winds. Last eggplant baked into casserole. Winter winds.
Thank you. And I love that you ordered these in a way that really fit the flow of the seasons. Yeah. So, eggplant is also very much an acquired taste for me.
and the abundance was because one time we had a plant that had 8 eggplant all at once, and I felt like it was the octomom of eggplants.
And I don't have to tolerate it, but I was a vegetarian for many years, so I sort of felt like I had to learn how to cook with it.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm quite fond of it in Korean dishes, I think, because once you slather anything in chili paste, I find it pretty palatable.
And there you have it. You have to have the right spices to go with it. Then it's okay.
You really do. So one of the things I was interested in is you had the 3-liner and the duo-ku that both start with eggplant abundance. And I do this a lot in my own practice too. I have one image, and then it might be a first line, it might be a last line, or but either way, I have many haiku like that will incorporate this image. And I'm also remembering when Michael Dillon Welch came to our study group meeting virtually and did the whole presentation of all of the haiku that he wrote that incorporated the word forgiveness as either the first or last image. So how does that repeated imagery, is that something you find you do often? Is that something that really related to just the eggplant in particular?
I think in this case, I would say it related to the eggplant more than anything. I don't think I do repetition that much. I have seen later on I do sometimes, and of course, oftentimes you do this over time. You do one month and another month, and I forget what I have done earlier. So sometimes it just is something that is in my head, but I don't do it intentionally, I don't think.
I don't necessarily do it intentionally, but I think sometimes, so I know I write all of my haiku like in my head while I walk my dog. And so sometimes I'll see like a flower, and then I'll just write 3 haiku in my head all around that flower. I
would say one thing. I had a series that I was trying to develop on water, and there I have purposely tried to use the same first line for 3 or 4 haiku, just so that they hang together as a unit. So, but otherwise I don't usually do that.
I'm curious, were any of these, I know you did the Busan challenge, was that last year or was that 2020?
Yeah, 2020.
Yeah. Or did any of these come out of that?
Probably. And of course the bitter taste of home confinement is clearly a COVID relation, COVID related. So, and that has not yet been published. I was hoping that it might be when they somehow. The finally Night Frost one, Mike Railing liked it and put it in failed haiku.
There's a great sense of humor in just those 2 lines, which I always love a haiku that can make me giggle.
Well, and Mike Railing is really one who loves humor. That's part of field haiku. If you have something a little humorous, not obviously ha-ha, but just humorous, he will take it.
Yeah.
I have sometimes he just grabbed it the day I sent it.
Yeah.
If it has a sense of humor, because he has a great sense of humor himself.
Yeah, he really does.
So,
do you have, of the eggplant haiku, do you have a favorite?
Personally, I like the bitter taste of home confinement, simply because it brings together the sadness of the COVID as well as my relationship to eggplant in general.
What's your favorite eggplant? Since you don't love eggplant, but what is your favorite way to eat it when you?
I don't really have a favorite way. I have tried various ways to cook it, and I have yet to find. Usually, I cook it like an Indian stew with a few potatoes and onions, and sometimes a tomato in it. And that is to me the most palatable.
Yeah, I give Indian food a lot of credit also for I did not like okra. Being from Cleveland, that's not a thing I ever ate. Or they'd have it in the dining hall at college sometimes, but it would be like canned and slimy and disgusting. And but then one time I was working. This is back when I worked at Bookwoman, and I think for whatever reason we were short-staffed, and Susan, the owner, I think she was at Round Top, and I was just like working open to close. And a friend brought me Indian food, and it was so good. And I was like, "What is this?" And she said it was curried okra. I was like, oh, okra can be good.
Yeah, okra can be good, yeah.
But again, with the right it's all about
and that's it. Okra is another one for me, a totally acquired taste, because, I didn't grow up with okra or eggplant for that matter.
Yeah.
But I had to learn to eat it, and of course living in the South, you learn how to eat okra. And
you really do.
I usually have it in the garden. I haven't put any this year.
No.
Because it's going to be such a dry summer that probably nothing will grow. I water every day and still it doesn't grow.
Yeah, I'm very concerned about
it's
this
like
summer.
2011.
It really is.
Feel.
Yeah.
And
yeah, we'll see. All right, would you like to read your next 3?
Yeah, This is a totally different, but again from the garden. We have one small, one fig. It's not really a tree; it's a bush, really, right? And so, anyway, ripened fig, squirrels feast before we can. Ripened fig, squirrels feast before we can. Last ripened fig, squirrels' peace offering after the raid. Last ripened fig, squirrels' peace offering after the raid. Essential workers, squirrels harvest top-heavy loquat. Essential workers, squirrels harvest top-heavy loquat.
I love. First, I love how all of your work does connect to gardens, but I just love that there's a series of haiku that it's not inherently a linked series, but that it's just this dynamic that comes back into your life of you and the squirrels and the and the fruit trees.
And the thing is, we have a green belt behind our garden, and we have an open fence. So naturally, wildlife will come in, and the squirrels, even if they couldn't come through the bottom, they go over the top of the fence. And I mean, they always have an eye on the figs. And truly, when you wait, for the day that the perfect color of the fig has arrived, and you touch it, and it's almost soft, but not quite. Let's wait for another day, and then you go. Good morning. Somebody else has found it earlier, and the fig is gone. That's how these two things came about the fig. Now the essential workers, I have to explain. Essential workers, of course, during COVID time, that was a key word. That essential workers were given all kinds of preference, and our loquat tree had grown to 12 feet, and the last year before the heavy frost, as if it knew that it was going to die, it was loaded, absolutely loaded with loquat. And we could have never harvested the top of it. We harvested some that we could reach, even with a reacher and by hand and all. And the squirrels happily cleaned up the top. Absolutely, day after day after day, the squirrels worked there. And so to me, they were the essential workers, because otherwise they would have, these loquat would have rotted and fallen down. This way they could eat them and throw a few down so that the rabbits down on the ground would eat them too. So they were truly essential workers.
Yeah, they were. These, and especially that third haiku in particular, it reminds me of, obviously, COVID's been going for a while, and as writers, how can we not write about it in some way? But for me, for a long time, it was hard enough just to live through it. I couldn't write about it very much, because I'm just, oh my God, I'm living it. What is happening? And even a lot of, people were doing really insightful, essays and long pieces, and I couldn't deal with it. But I could always, I was always intrigued by COVID haiku, and that was something I could always read. And I know Frog Pond did a whole section just on COVID haiku, and I think their summer issue of 2020. And I'm interested in COVID haiku, and I find it highly readable because it is it's the moment, and it's not trying to make it more than it is. It can become more than it is.
Oh yeah.
But it doesn't have to be. And it's just so digestible. The way that, especially early on, I found myself it had to be a sort of one day at a time. Here's this day, and here's this day. And haiku really worked for me in that sense. Yeah. So the last ripened fig, do you want to, so that was part of a high bun. Do you want to say more about the high bun as a whole?
The last ripened fig, squirrels' peace offering after the raid. There I had explained in the high bun. The high bun is, of course, is the text, long text part before you write the little haiku. And in the text I had described what happened, how we had anticipated having this wonderful harvest of figs and how they had grown so nicely. And then of course they didn't happen because the figs, the squirrels ate all of them except one. And so to me that was the peace offering to us. Yes, we left you one. We understand.
I love it. And it actually, it's weird. It's like that haiku to me. I think about, have you seen that painting, The Gleaners? I can't remember who did it, but they're like, and I'm like, oh, and to me, it's the humor in there comes from like, we have this human sense of hubris that we are powerful and in control, and it's like, nope, the squirrels have just deigned to let us glean the last.
And they really, but I mean, it was the sense of humor they had, that they left us just one, was at least I had to laugh about it because normally they're not that generous, so they clean up pretty good.
Do you have a favorite way to eat figs or loquats?
Well, the loquats, I mean, if they were really nice and round and good, you could eat them directly. But I have actually made a lot of jam out of them, which is really tedious because you have to take the seeds out first. But then I left the skins in it, and I just cooked it and ground the whole thing. And it was a fresh kind of jam. It was not something to be preserved, so I had it in the refrigerator, and it was pretty good. And the figs, well, we haven't had a chance to eat figs any other way than having one or two from the bush. And of course the bush also died down in the frost, and it has come back. But it was, and the big loquat that I've talked about, that died. Absolutely to the ground. Another one that was from the same batch that I planted myself, it has come back, but this big one, it was just dead. And it had a trunk about, 8, 9, 10 inches. And I had grown it from seed, and that's why I was a little bit attached to that tree.
Yeah, absolutely. When you can grow one from seed, that is
and the
impressive.
seed was from a tree here in Austin at my niece's house, but that tree also died. They also had to cut it down completely. So, that frost did a lot of damage.
Yeah, it did. And for those of you listening, that we're referring to the Texas snowpocalypse of 2021.
Right.
Yeah.
Strangely, anything else related to the water part, that we sat without water, we had harvested snow and all. None of that got ever published. I had, I sent it to many places, but either they couldn't really understand what we were talking about, or they thought, what are they talking about? In Northerners, there was a but to us, it was really, a tremendous week with nothing, and harvesting the snow from under the ice shield and whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That one for me was, I had had to move like about 2 weeks before that because my landlord just sold my house over Christmas, and I was like, I sold your house, you have to leave. Okay. And I couldn't, and I'd put in a big vegetable garden in 2020, as so many of us did, and I had my wildflower garden, and I couldn't take all of it, but I took some of the wildflower gardens, and I took some of my cuttings, I had so many agave pups, so I took some of my agave pups, and I took just a couple of things that had meant a lot to me, and even though I had tried to protect them, they all died. And then my old neighborhood had water before my new neighborhood did, so I actually went back to my old neighbor's house to just fill up flush water from her spigot, and I'd been gone 2 weeks, and I just looked into my yard, and everything had been completely razed and ripped out, and it ripped me up.
Yeah, that is heartbreaking.
It was so heartbreaking. Anyway, do you have a favorite of these three?
Well, I don't really know. I like all three of them for different reasons, so I don't think I have a favorite. Yeah. And 2 of them were published, so that's nice.
Yeah, that's
and one is just coming out, or it is apparently published.
Okay, yeah.
Somebody has seen the copy. We haven't.
I know, and I'm like, is it coming to my house, or did I already update my address? And so is it going to be waiting for me in Missouri when I move? We'll see. All right, and so the last section of haiku we're going to talk about today is concerning dining during COVID. So you want to read those last three?
Yeah, I mean, between being married for 50 plus years and having to figure out something to cook during COVID and not being able to go to a restaurant became really, really boring. I mean, that to me was one of the more boring things. Because you run out of ideas no matter what, and then of course certain things were not even available in the stores and all. And so what we had not really done ever, we never were the kind that orders pizza on Friday night or something. So takeout food was something we didn't really do. But during COVID time, we finally succumbed and ordered food out, and then came always the question, but which flavor do we order? Because fortunately we have Italian, we have Indian, we have Chinese, we have Thai, all within a range that would deliver to us. And so the question was Mexican also. And then the question was always, well, which flavor do we want today? And some of the food travels better than others.
Oh yeah.
And we found out that certain flavors like the Mexican did not travel well.
Oh.
It looks wonderful on the plate when you got in the restaurant, but when it comes in a little box at home, it's just not appetizing anymore.
No.
And so that's where some of the ideas for these things came about.
Great. Do you want to read them?
Yeah. Takeout diversion during COVID lockdown, but which ethnic flavor? Take out diversion during COVID lockdown, but which ethnic flavor? Take out dinner, Indian flavor for days, cooking vacation. Take out dinner, Indian flavor for days, cooking vacation. Indian meal not shared with family, lost taste. Indian meal not shared with family, lost taste.
So did you settle on Indian food as generally the best?
No, we did order Indian food more because and Italian food. Those two we basically settled on. There's a near Manpasando, what is it called, Biryani Grill. They make decent takeout food. Their restaurant is not worth to sit in, but they make good takeout food. So we ordered from them off and on, and we tried some others, but since they were close by, that was good. And we have a good good Italian place close by, Mangieri, so they are good.
We did a lot of we did Indian food. And we did actually John, my partner, had a whole he just sort of tried to develop a whole schema for which things served as takeout the best, and he pardon me, he was partial to Chinese because his whole thing was Chinese has been served as takeout for years, so they know what they're doing. So
right. Well, that's also true.
We did a lot of Walk-In Express, which is a great little convenience store, Chinese place near UT, and we would have had a lot of sad meals without it, because we got really, and John can cook, but it was just getting really boring.
Well, that is the thing. I mean, I can cook. I've cooked for more than 50 years, but there comes a point when you say, now what? How can I make it a little interesting, especially when the food is basically the highlight of the day. Yeah. I mean, the whole day, especially when you're retired, you have limited things that you do, and food, the evening meal is usually at least some kind of a highlight. And then when you run out of ideas, that's pretty bad. Yeah. I mean.
Yeah. So the third haiku, Indian meal not shared with family, lost taste. That is the one that I'm intrigued by. Is there a story behind that?
Well, there is only a story in the sense that when we used to go out with the family and share a meal in a restaurant also. And then it tastes a whole lot better. You know, Indian food is shared, tastes a whole lot better. When you eat it by yourself, it is okay, but it's, because you cook only 2 or 3 little things. Whereas when you have a shared meal with 6 or 8 people, you know, you can nibble a little bit here, a little bit there, and your flavors mix, and it's a whole a more complex experience in addition to having the people around. But I mean, even the food is more complex when you have more people, because you can at least look at it or even taste from it or something. So this was really not so much a COVID thing. It was general. Well, it was in a way, because it was felt that because of the confinement that we couldn't really go out together, or we couldn't even go to each other's place and have a meal. You know, I mean, the one time we did bring them over here, we sat out on the patio because we were afraid, you know, and we all had masks and all. I mean, that's not fun.
No.
That's absolutely not fun.
No. And I absolutely, Indian food really is meant to be shared with.
Yeah, and of course the different varieties of Indian food that, you know, make it more interesting, and you know, we discovered there is a more Rajasthani kind of food near in the South Park Meadows, and we have and then there is a South Indian one on 290, and this other one is sort of a generic, you know, Indian food. So that becomes more interesting when you can go to some of these other.
Yeah, there was a time actually early in the pandemic, I was trying to cook a lot of Indian food because honestly, like the Indian grocery stores were like small, and they didn't like going to HEB super stressed me out early in the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm just gonna go to the Indian grocery store, and especially like, and so it sort of got like just. I would try to make these meals in part to just like kill time, and then I'm like, oh, I'm too exhausted to eat, and then I'm like, there's only 2 of us, we can't even invite people over. This is ridiculous. But John loves tandoori chicken, and so we were like making a fair amount of that because it's, you know, marinate it and then you can just do something simple with it. But you know, I eat meat now, but I was a vegetarian, and I've never really enjoyed handling raw meat, and I just loved going to the halal/Indian store, and I'd get a whole chicken and they'd say, would you like me to cut it up for you? And I'm like, yes, please, thank you so much.
No, that is not something I would ever do. I mean, this is beyond me. I'm glad that there are grocery stores that do that.
Yeah.
Because deep down my husband is a vegetarian. I mean, he will eat the meat, but going past the meat section of the store, no, he wouldn't.
Yeah.
He wouldn't do it.
No.
So there's a kind of schizophrenia there, but anyway.
I'll do it, but I get because again I spent so long like without ever learning how to cook meat. Like I just get there and like if they don't have the exact thing that is on my grocery list, I'm like, I have no idea what the substitution is.
Yeah.
Whereas John, on the other hand, before the pandemic, because he is who he is, he bought an old-fashioned antique hand crank meat grinder.
Oh, okay.
And when you couldn't buy anything, like we went to HEB, I think about 2 weeks in, and there was no meat except these whole roasts that like no one was buying because they're like, we don't know what to do with these. And so he was buying whole roast and just making hamburger.
Yeah, right.
And he would just say, you should just go somewhere else for a little while.
Yeah, I remember that. I mean, I have done this as a child. You know, we used to have those at home, but now I wouldn't even ever have one. But yeah, the old-fashioned meat grinder had something to be said for it.
Well, he got it because you know, we're from the Midwest where the Italian food is a little more abundant and a little better. And so he was just like, I need to just make my own Italian sausage because there's no decent Italian sausage in Texas. Right. And then it came in handy, and then so it's this was long before even the power went out, but it was just like, there's no food, we're just gonna make our own hamburger.
Right, yeah. Well, that's great.
Yeah,
that's great.
It was not fun. Now at first it was like super distressing, and I'm like, this is kind of funny. Like the time that we just he ground all the meat. There was no we involved. At the time, he just ground a bunch of meat because that's all there was.
Yeah, right. No, that's great. I mean,
yeah. So do you have one of these that's your favorite?
Favorites vary. Depending on the time of day or the mood I'm in, I like one over the other, or I don't really have favorites. I have some that I think they need work. That happens. I mean, there are some of these that I'm thinking of, why are they not getting published? Well, there is this line or this word that maybe if I change it, something will happen.
Yeah.
And I had one particular one that I really liked, but not from any of these, but it just never really got off the ground until I found a way to change the first line, and suddenly somebody took it. So these, I mean, I've never been one thinking that you need to edit your haiku down to the. I was never really one to believe in that too much. But because every so often you have a haiku that just comes to you and there it is, and there's not much you need to do to it. But then I found that some of them where I have the idea, but it doesn't seem to come across properly, that yes, you do sometimes just piddle with it and think about it and figure out maybe this or maybe that, and suddenly it works.
Yeah, one of the things I've really been learning is, or observing is, the tricky thing about haiku is like so much of it depends on just a certain trust in like a certain amount of like shared knowledge.
That is also very important, and I've since this haiku community is very international, a lot of the haiku that come from other parts of the world, a lot of Americans have no sense of what this means. And I also sometimes feel that way, because I may like to write something about either my Indian experiences or my German experiences that are part of me, but not necessarily part of the environment that I'm in. And so oftentimes I will not write it because I know people will not understand it, so it just doesn't get written. But it is very true that, the shared experience, shared environment. Like for instance, I'm pretty sure that 5 years down the road, some of our COVID and winter poems, people will look at it and say, "Huh? What was that all about?" It will not fly anymore. I mean, it's just the moment, and the moment is done. On the other hand, haiku is supposed to be a poem of the moment.
Exactly.
So
yeah,
you take that with a grain of salt, whatever that means.
No food pun intended.
No food pun intended, right?
Well, do you have any last thoughts about your haiku practice, or writing about bringing food into your haiku, or food in general that you'd like to share with the podcast?
Frankly, even though I have a number of haiku that deal with food or with the garden or with growing food, it is not an uppermost concern of mine. But that doesn't mean that I don't do it when I feel like there is something interesting to write about. But it's not something that I concentrate on. And as far as general haiku, I'm trying now to learn Tanka. And I find it very difficult. Even though I have written longer poems for 25 years, suddenly somehow the haiku was really what I felt comfortable with. This very tight, trying to construct something that is, 1 line to 3 lines, but now suddenly it's 5 and 7 lines. I'm thinking, what do I say? And especially since it wants to be 57577, so they apparently have not allowed to condense it too much. So.
Oh, really?
Well, somewhere I read, I don't know if that is correct, but anyway, so that makes it difficult for me to do.
Well, if you have any insights, let me know, because I cannot figure Tanka out.
I mean, I've been trying now. There is some place where to send them, and you can send up to 10. And I have, with great difficulty, I have produced 5, I think. So I don't know if I even want to send them or not.
Sure.
But anyway, I mean, this is one thing to enlarge your horizon personally, I think I lean much more to the senryu than to the haiku, because the nature experience is somewhat limited for me, since I'm basically mostly in my garden. I mean, I don't hike anymore. I don't go out in nature that much anymore. So the human experience is really more of where I find my inspiration.
I think food lends itself to senryu really well anyway, because so much of cooking and sharing food is the human experience.
Right.
You know? So it does bring in, you know, the garden or what have you, but it is so much of that human experience is in the cultivating, and then the cooking, and then the eating of food.
But the interesting part was that cooking and food must have been in the air right now when you started this, because Failed Haiku picked up and said, yeah, our next topic is food.
I saw that.
And I thought, oh, I just have put these for Allison. I cannot use these. What do I have that is not in that series? So I found one, and they took it, so.
That's good, yeah.
So, but I mean, it was crazy that all of a sudden food was in the
Yeah,
air.
and I think there was someone else that was doing something on food.
I don't know if Patricia was doing something on food. She had other topics recently.
Yeah, someone else was doing something on
Yeah.
food, and so yeah, there's definitely some sort of like thing in the air.
Yeah. Well, it may be a post-COVID thing.
Yeah, maybe.
Because we all had that experience of being cooped up at home and not really being able to go out and enjoy food outside. And now everybody is traveling and going for food outside, and so food is on people's mind, I think.
I think it is. I just tapped into that collective consciousness thing.
Right, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So what can you say?
All right, well, thank you, and I'm so glad we got to talk about this today.
Good. I hope it will make a good...
All right, that's a wrap. Thanks again to Christa for being one of my earliest podcast guests, and coming along as I'm still finding my rhythm in all of this. I really loved just the chance to talk with her about poetry. Christa is sort of a bonus elder for me. Both of my grandfathers lived a long time, but my maternal grandmother died when I was only 6, and my paternal grandmother died when I was 20. And that just never felt like enough time. So any bonus matriarchs I can get in my life, that's always been very very gratifying for me to have. And thanks again to all of you for listening and commenting. I really appreciate that anyone just wants to hear another voice talk about haiku. Our next episode is in 2 weeks with Claire Vogel Camargo, another mainstay of the Austin haiku scene. And our conversation there really took a turn into the intersection of family and food, and I think you're going to love it. Remember that if you want to support this whole project, not just the podcast, but the blog, you can buy me a coffee. There will be a link to that in the show notes. And supporters are this month going to get the bonus recipes of John's party margaritas and also his watermelon agua fresca. And if you can't financially support the show, but you want to help in other ways, one call to action I have is that episode 4, which obviously hasn't been released yet, we had some sound quality issues, and it is way beyond my beginner skill set to figure out how to resolve those. So if you know a decent sound editor, especially one who works with podcasts, I don't know who to go to. There's a lot of people out in the world. I am definitely more than willing to pay to have this audio improved. So I'm not asking for free work, but if anyone has a name and you can just pass on a name to me to help me with episode 4, that would be fantastic. I would super appreciate it. Anyway, that's that, and hopefully next time I will be coming to you with my actual microphone. Until then, I hope you enjoy some nice coffee, some nice tea, and it's still pretty hot, so whatever your summer beverage is of choice.